I wonder how the impact on the player base and retention, the fact that this will have, the fact that they don't have the endgame changes in this patch. I mean, obviously, we know retention's going to get hurt, I guess, but I wonder how it will impact the player base, because I think a lot of people are like, they're just waiting for the endgame changes, and that's not coming this time. I do wonder what kind of impact this will have. We're definitely going to be watching this. Check out Dreamcore. Let me link it here in the YouTube chat and stream chat. Check him out. It's Dreamcore. Let's check it out.
Path of Exile 2's 0.4 update was revealed. The Druid is coming to the game as the first strength and intelligence hybrid class as expected, and the Fate of the Vaal new league mechanic is essentially PoE 2's version of Incursion from PoE 1.
Well, Incursion and Synthesis, to be fair. But yeah, I think that Fate of the Vaal is going to be, without a doubt, my favorite league mechanic. Like, without a doubt. That's what I'm looking at. It is so freaking good, dude.
Now, the last of the Druids update is also going to include quite a lot of game balance changes. So, on the topic of balance, in this video I'm going to go over my 3 biggest winners and 3 biggest losers of patch 0.4, beginning with the losers. And first up we have...
I wonder if he's going to mention the cocaine ants, because there were so many people. Like, if you look at the player base that played as minions, out of the minion player base, a lot of people played the cocaine ants. And they are DOA now, which is kind of wild.
The endgame, or the lack of endgame changes. Back at the beginning of patch 0.3, GHAZZY had mentioned several times that patch 0.4 was going to have a clear focus on addressing the endgame. And it's not like the plan changed soon after those comments, because even as recently as patch 0.3.1 just 2 months ago, Jonathan had this to say.
Now, it's no secret that we need to make some improvements to the endgame, and the plan has been to do some pretty major changes in 0.4.0. But we realized it might be nice to iterate on some of the more mechanical changes in 0.3.1 and just save the new content for 0.4.0. That way we can get a chance to test some of these things a bit earlier.
So, what happened to those major changes? Well, according to Mark in the reveal video for 0.4, they weren't ready in time to ship with this patch. And I have to say that this is a massive disappointment for me. The weakest part of Path of Exile 2 right now is the endgame by far.
Yeah.
You play through the campaign having this amazing experience throughout, only to reach endgame where the gameplay loop just really isn't all that interesting. In fact, I've had several playthroughs where I have a fun build idea and I play the character through the campaign, only to quit on that playthrough as soon as I reach maps. It's almost like the life is sucked out of the game once you reach the endgame. It's just not as fun. And I really feel like the focus of 0.4 should have been on addressing the state of the endgame.
I wonder how the impact on the player base and retention, the fact that this will have, the fact that they don't have the endgame changes in this patch. I mean, obviously, we know retention's going to get hurt, I guess, but I wonder how it will impact the player base, because I think a lot of people are like, they're just waiting for the endgame changes, and that's not coming this time. I do wonder what kind of impact this will have. It'll be interesting to see on the launch.
Rather than delivering PoE 2's version of Incursion. Don't get me wrong, the Fate of the Vaal looks great, but I would rather have a patch with no new league mechanic at all if it meant that the endgame would finally be addressed in a meaningful way. I'm only going to enjoy running through the campaign over and over again so many times. Eventually, the endgame needs to deliver. And I'm just not convinced that GHAZZY have their priorities in order, placing a new league mechanic ahead of solving the core of the game.
I actually, normally I agree with Dreamcore's takes, because I think Dreamcore is a fantastic and a very, very smart individual. I actually disagree with this. I obviously want that game to be there. There's a huge focus on that. I still think that the importance of getting us more league mechanics has to be there every league. It has to, for a variety of reasons. Not only does it help build up the bulk of content available in the endgame, even though, you know, the major endgame changes does take priority, I still think that league mechanic needs to be there. It also helps them shape and build the core bulk of the game in the background that also needs to be there just as much as endgame major rework changes. So I don't think that they should ever neglect adding a new league mechanic. Marcus also said that that's part of how they're introducing things like crafting mechanics and whatnot. So I would arguably say that league mechanic is the highest priority for each league that they post to bring something else. It also part of hype and all those things. But I genuinely believe that they have to put out a league mechanic every league. They have to. They cannot post an update and say, yeah, there's no league here. We'll run the same one. We'll run it back what we had last league. I don't think that will be a good trade-off at all.
Now, there are a handful of changes to alleviate some of the issues involved with the gameplay loop of mapping. Most notably, the map juicing element, where desecrating and instilling maps is no longer a thing, and some of the juicing from those mechanics is now being moved onto tablets. So less clicks and preparation is involved for setting up maps, which is a good change.
Yep.
And they're also making a change to essentially lower the amount of monsters in endgame maps, but make those monsters tankier and more rewarding. That's going to be a change that I need to playtest before passing judgment on. But overall, these changes aren't going to alter the core gameplay loop of Path of Exile 2's endgame all that much. And that's unfortunate considering this was supposed to be the patch that would do just that. Next up, for the biggest losers, it's the Deadeye. Now, the Deadeye Ascendancy for the Ranger was by far the most played class in patch 0.3, especially in the early weeks of the league. And a lot of this had to do with the balance of the game, and the fact that speed is such a powerful stat, and the Deadeye has access to Tailwind, an incredibly powerful buff which allows it to be faster than any other class.
Yep.
But in 0.4, this Ascendancy is receiving quite a large nerf. Firstly, the Tailwind buff is being nerfed directly. Tailwind stacks up to 10 times, and each stack previously granted 1% increased movement speed, 3% increased skill speed, and 15% increased evasion rating. The new Tailwind is going to be losing 1% increased skill speed per stack, and 5% increased evasion rating, so at 10 stacks you'll be losing 10% increased skill speed, which for most Deadeye builds is essentially 10% increased attack speed, and you'd also lose 50% increased evasion rating. And you gain a new stat which adds damage reduction to the prevented damage from deflected hits. So if you deflect a hit, that will normally provide 40% damage reduction, and at the maximum of 10 Tailwind stacks, a deflected hit will provide 50% damage reduction, which is quite nice, but you do need to roll a successful deflect to benefit from that bonus DR. Now, this Tailwind nerf is relatively tame compared to another nerf for the Deadeye, because the Wind Ward Notable is just gone. It's being completely removed in patch 0.4. On 10 stacks of Tailwind, you had 30% less damage taken. And even though you lose all of your Tailwind upon being hit from gathering winds, Wind Ward would prevent damage from that hit before the stacks were lost. Additionally, Wind Ward's less damage taken stat also wasn't specific to hits. So standing on damage over time ground effects, like the ones from Abyss, meant you'd benefit from the less damage taken on that incoming damage over time without losing your Tailwind stacks. But Wind Ward is just outright being removed in the last of the Druids update. It's gone. This is quite a big nerf defensively for the Deadeye, and notably the additional deflect damage reduction on Tailwind doesn't interact with damage over time from ground effects.
I don't think so either. And I believe Fabian was talking about maybe playing Pathfinder, right? I think this is part of the result of that. I still think that Roa got too much of a buff, and I still think LA is going to be good.
It only works for hits and the ailments those hits inflict, and only on a successful deflect. So you will feel quite a bit squishier on the Deadeye Ascendancy in 0.4 and beyond. Now, the final loser for this video is Walker of the Wilds. Now, this is a huge nerf. The Walker of the Wilds was a keystone on the right side of the passive tree, positioned between the Monk and Ranger start locations. And I say was a keystone, that's because it's just completely gone for patch 0.4, just like the Deadeye's Wind Ward. This keystone made it so that your mana leech effects would occur based on elemental damage rather than physical damage. And considering almost all of the attack builds on that side of the tree are elemental based, this was a no-brainer, and that was clear from the sheer amount of builds using this keystone in patch 0.3. Just 1 month into the Rise of the Abyssal League, 24% of characters above level 90 were allocating this keystone. That is wild. Well, no more. The Walker of the Wild's keystone will no longer exist, and in its place, a new lineage support gem will be added to replicate its effects. If you want to obtain the same mana sustain from Leech, you will now need to expend one of your support gem slots for utility, which means you're not gaining any damage multiplier from that slot.
Yep.
Additionally, those leech effects will only function for that skill, and since it's going to be a lineage support gem, that means that you can only make use of it on one skill. You can't use multiple copies of that support gem. Now this means that some builds may be forced into investing elsewhere to solve mana sustain, such as the conservative casting wheel near the monk starting location, to obtain lower mana costs and increased mana regeneration, and that's at least 3 passive points spent, so this will also mean you'll have less points to spend on other stats elsewhere.
Very
okay,
true.
let's move on to the biggest
The
winners,
Svalin
beginning
buff
with
was
Svalin.
crazy.
Now,
Like
many unique
crazy.
items are being buffed in patch 0.4, and one of the biggest buffs on that list is the Svalin Shield. Back in patch 0.3, block was significantly changed, capping the maximum block chance at 50%, but making it so that you could block all hits, including area of effect hits. And that means that you only have to be aware of those boss abilities with a red flash. Those remain unblockable. Now, Svalin is a unique shield that has a very powerful modifier. Block chance is lucky. This rolls your block chance twice, and if either roll is successful, you'll block that hit. But in 0.3, a new line was added to Svalin.
Can you imagine a foulboard version of this where this one just goes away?
To make 15 to 20% of the damage from
Svalin will
blocked
be
hits
super
be dealt to
expensive,
you.
yeah.
So, for example, a normal shield with capped block at 50% would mean on average you'll be hit 1 out of every 2 incoming hits. You take full damage from the unblocked hit, and no damage from the blocked hit for an average of 50% damage reduction. A capped 50% block Svalin has an effective block chance of 75 if you include the lucky modifier, but you also take a percentage of damage from the blocked hits. Let's go with the best case roll in patch 0.3, which was 15%. This would mean that 25% of the time you take full damage from an incoming hit, and the 75% of the time that you block that hit, you take 15% of the damage. And this works out to be an average of about 63.75% damage reduction. Now that is quite a big improvement compared to normal block, but by using Svalin, you're giving up quite a lot of defensive power from the shield slot, such as a lot of armor coming from that slot, or the potential of an additional physical damage reduction modifier, not to mention flat life. However, in patch 0.4, this modifier will now roll from 0 to 20%. So theoretically, you can get the 1 in 21 perfect divine and take no percentage of damage from incoming blocked hits, and still fully benefit from the lucky modifier. That would work out at an average of 75% damage reduction, which is really good. Not to mention that Svalin is also getting a small buff to armor as well, which is nice. But even with this damage from blocked hits modifier rolling in the low digits, is still a very big buff, and I expect we'll be seeing this unique make an appearance in a lot of builds in 0.4.
I think it'll be really expensive.
Next up in the...
Like, we had a Svalin issue in PoE1 as well because of how ridiculously strong it is for defenses. You could push up over 90% block chance in PoE1. 90+% block chance because of Svalin. And now, and since the block cap is capped at 50, you can now bring it up to 75 with this. I don't think there are as many ways to get increased max block. What's up, Kindness? How you doing? Svalin is just going to be ridiculously good. Now, here's another kicker to this. The roll can roll from 0. This means that it would be attractive to actually use Divine Orbs on this shield, right? And since that's the case, I think that every Svalin will be ridiculously pricey. And then people will just use Divine Orbs on it to roll the 0. And on top of that, there's the double corrupt temples from the Fate of the Vaal incursion / synthesis, whatever you want to call it, lead mechanic, to potentially corrupt off that modifier from a Foulborn version, right? I'm just saying, that's pretty wild.
Biggest winners, it's the Pathfinder ascendancy for the Ranger. Now, several ascendancies are being changed in 0.4, with a handful receiving larger overhauls, and one of those overhauls is the Pathfinder. This ascendancy is going to be losing a few notables in the next update, specifically the Contagious Contamination node, which spreads poisons like Herald of Plague, and the Choice node for immunity to specific elemental ailments. but in trade-off it's going to gain a crazy new branch which is somewhat similar to the Path of Exile 1's Scion Ascendancy.
Yep.
The Pathfinder will now have access to the Path Seeker Notable, which has two choices. Path of the Warrior.
The problem with the Pathfinder, in my opinion, is that if you don't utilize the rest of the ascendancies of the Pathfinder, then what happens is you put an immense amount of pressure on attributes from your gear. And then on top of that, you only really benefit from defensive scaling, to be fair, unless you use damage yourself. But changing your attributes for a 5% damage increase is not super effective, and the cost efficiency can be all right, I guess. But ultimately, it's like every Pathfinder build want to use an ascendancy or something. I mean, maybe. It's still very interesting. Don't get me wrong. It's still very, very interesting. But I'm not sure how popular Pathfinder will be with these approaches, unless, of course, they're using an ability that doesn't really need assistance damage-wise from the ascendancy themselves, like LA.
And Path of the Sorceress. These nodes do exactly what they say. They allow you to path from the Warrior or the Sorceress starting locations on the passive skill tree. This is going to open up a lot of new possibilities for Pathfinder builds in patch 0.4, enabling easier access to stronger nodes in specific areas of the tree. But that's not all, because the Traveler's Wisdom node, which previously granted 5 bonus passive points, is now becoming a node that extends from Pathseeker, and is being changed to instead provide additional options for the travel nodes in your build. Usually on a travel node you'll select between +5 strength, intelligence or dexterity, but by taking Traveler's Wisdom you'll have access to 3 other choices: 5% increased damage, global defenses or cost efficiency. So this is providing a lot more specialization as long as you're able to solve your attributes, with potential to stack defenses such as energy shield and evasion, or even armor considering you can now path from the warrior area, and you'll even be able to invest into some extra damage if you want to, or some cost efficiency to help with mana costs. This node pretty much guarantees that you won't be wasting any travel points, and you'll always be able to get some extra benefits from any nodes that you don't require attributes from. Okay, lastly, for the biggest winners in this video, it's another unique item, the Couture of Crimson. Now this body armor is one of the only sources of life overflow in the game, the others being the Blood Mage and another unique item, the Gnashing Sash Belt. But the Couture of Crimson is unique in the mechanics of its life overflow, which is obtained from Life Leech specifically. When you leech life while your unreserved life is full, instead of losing that life leech, it will instead overflow life up to 50% of your maximum life. So you can have up to 150% of your total life for the purpose of absorbing incoming damage. But the trade-off for this body armor in previous patches was that it had a
Foulborn corrupting. I think he's going to mention that. I think Dreamcoach going to talk about how you corrupt this and you Foulborn off this. So for those of you who don't know what I mean when I say Foulborn, it is a PoE 1 term. It was rather recent, where there were Foulborn uniques. They were basically another version of the unique where 1 or 2 of the modifiers on the item was changed to another type of modifier. With the double corruption system in 0.4, we can corrupt the item with a Vaal Orb, then bring it into the temple for a room that has to be level 3 or tier 3 called Locus of Corruption, which is similar to the way it works in PoE 1 from the Incursion Temple's Locus of Corruption tier 3, which in PoE 2.4 will allow you to put a corrupted item into that device, and it's a 50-50 that it will double corrupt it essentially, right? So my understanding is that we will be able to have an off chance of getting rid of the reduced max life and getting another modifier in there, right? That is my understanding. Only if it's a Vaal unique.
25% reduced maximum life modifier. And since it's quite difficult to obtain increased life modifiers in Path of Exile 2, this downside was very significant indeed. To the point where it was pretty much not even worth equipping this item, since the upside only just about made up for the downside. However, in patch 0.4 there's a huge...
I don't think it's Vaal only. Maybe I misunderstood that, because like if it's a Vaal specific unique only, corrupted Vaal unique. But isn't Couture an actual Vaal unique though? Or am I missing it? All right, I'll take back what I said. I want to double check that before I make any more statements around it. Then I'll take it back. I do want to double check that. I might be off on that.
Huge buff to this item, as the
Then again, they
reduced
lower the
life
max life,
modifier is gone, and it now rolls 10 to 15% increased maximum life.
It doesn't matter. Like I didn't read this because they changed the reduced life into increased life, so we don't want to remove it either way. But I was pretty sure that you could. That was for non-Vaal uniques as well, but I might be off on that one. Either way, I completely forgot this. Thank you, Dreamcore. I forgot the fact that they actually removed the reduced life and they actually increased it instead.
How rare increased
you don't want to
maximum
remove
life
it.
modifiers are.
It doesn't matter.
This
But I'll
modifier
double-check
alone
the
is
Vaal
very
parts.
strong at up to 15%. But the Couture of Crimson
Thank you,
still
chat, for
has
correcting
the
me.
life leech overflow mechanics, and this just makes this a very strong defensive option for a lot of life-based builds, as long as they're able to reliably leech life. Now, I wanted to do a little section here at the end of this video to cover
This is the life buff the community asked for, right?
my predictions and how they went for patch 0.4, because several people commented that they like a follow-up video to wrap up on that. And whilst I don't want to do a full video, I will just go over them briefly now. So I predicted 3 buffs and 3 nerfs for 0.4. The first was a nerf prediction for the Deadeye, and I mentioned here that I expected the Tailwind branch especially to be nerfed, which is exactly what happened. Tailwind is being nerfed and Wind Ward is gone. My second nerf prediction was Herald of Thunder, which did get nerfed in the patch notes, but it's only a small nerf. And my third nerf prediction was crafting, which is indeed getting nerfed. This is going core, but it won't be in every map. And the Omen of Homogenizing Exaltation is going away, which is a very big nerf.
So homogenizing exaltation removal was not in the patch notes. Mark only said homogenizing exaltation. Does that mean we have homogenizing regal still? I don't know.
To endgame crafting. Then for my buff predictions, I had the left side passive tree, which is of course getting a lot of love this patch with the addition of the druid. And I predicted a Vaal alternate blood mage or gemling ascendancy. For that one, we'll have to wait and see, because GGG kept the Abyssal Lich secret for 0.3, and Mark said he loved the Abyssal Lich and that there may be more, kind of hinting that there might be something in this patch or maybe in a future patch. And lastly, I predicted endgame unique buffs, which we did indeed get. There was actually a lot of unique buffs in the patch notes, and the new uniques that they're adding are also focused on the endgame too. So 5 out of 6 predictions correct, and potentially 6 out of 6 if we do get a secret ascendancy from the Vaal temple mechanic. We'll have to wait and see for that one. But there you have it, my biggest winners and losers for patch 0.4. What are your thoughts on the last of the Druids update now that it's been fully revealed? Let me know by commenting below. Thanks for watching this video, and as always, stay tuned and stay safe.
Great video by Dreamcore. Let me link it. I completely missed the Couture life change. Yeah, I must have been fucking extremely tired last night reading through this. I completely missed that. And I gotta double check the whole Vaal thing. But great video for Dreamcore as always. Don't forget the like button for him. I'll leave a link in the description down below for him as well. So do check that out. Dreamcore, big shout out to you. Fantastic videos as always, man. And I'll see you guys in the next one.